Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone out there in streaming land. I am Chris Short, Technical Marketing Manager on the OpenShift team at Red Hat. I am joined by two of my favorite people at Red Hat today. Jay Doby is the author of the Kubernetes Operators, or one of the authors of the Kubernetes Operators book, which you can get for free. I will drop the link in chat here in just a second. And my other favorite person that's here today is Cedric Clyburn, who's an intern of ours. You might have seen his recent Podman video. We played it, I think, last week or the week before on the streams. That's also on YouTube. It got a shout out in this morning's show when I mentioned you were coming on, Cedric. So
Hey,
I
thank you
mean,
for that. Wow.
you're a popular guy, so like don't ever forget this very moment in time right now. So Jay, you kind of had this idea for the show. So let me toss it to you real quick. You can do your self intro and you can kind of tee this up.
Cool. Yeah. So Cedric has 6 weeks with OpenShift. It's probably been a little bit more by now, maybe closer to 7, 8. But Cedric's an intern on our team. In fact, let's just do this, Cedric. Can I jump to the intro slides?
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and do that.
So to introduce myself, I've been in this channel a handful of times now. I'm a developer advocate at Red Hat. I've been here, actually Friday marks my 14th year anniversary at Red Hat.
Whoa.
I know.
Wow.
And my most recent role, my current role is a developer advocate for all things OpenShift. You can see, I'll very quickly touch on what the slide is. Burr Sutter had me do master courses over the DevNation channel. And he said to me in passing, I can't wait to see what your bio slide looks like. So I got super stressed that I had to do something creative. And then nerding out with a friend of mine, we kind of came up with this. The only reason I even give the backstory is I kind of peeked ahead and I know what Cedric's look like. So it makes a little more sense when you realize that I did this kind of as a goof and then Cedric decided to goof on me. But like I said, I'm a developer advocate. We have Cedric on our team this summer as an intern. When we hired him, things were drastically different in the world, and there were a little more expectations that I would meet him in person for one, but that there would be more event-based things like that. But like everyone else, he's converted over to this virtual world. So like Chris said, he did the Podman video. He's been streaming with us a couple times on the IBM Twitch stream. And I wanted to give him more speaking opportunity, but more relevant is we had a pair of fresh eyes, and I've been telling him since day one, every time I'm like, have you ever played with this? Have you ever played with that? And you could see that kind of new young kid, like kind of sheepishness, like, no. And I'm like, that's good, because we, like my role, Chris's role, we are interacting with people and we're trying to bring them up to speed. And it's so easy in our own echo chamber of, I know how this stuff works, so I'm going to just kind of half-ass my explanation and go on. I'm like, having a pair of fresh eyes is amazing for us, because if you have questions, I'm saying this to Cedric, if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask, because you're pointing out an issue where we've all dropped the ball, because you should be able to learn what you need to know from our materials. I love watching Chris's face right now, because he's like, holy shit, that's really stressful for us. And it was. And I told Cedric, I'm going to be super critical, take a lot of notes. But like I said, as a developer advocate, I also wanted to keep him in front of presentations and things like that. So I figured, let's combine the ideas and let's give him an opportunity to just kind of pull together some thoughts for what surprised him, what he liked, what he didn't like. I don't expect this to all be sunshine and roses and everything is simple and easy to work with. So that's kind of the context for here. Cedric, I'm going to just hand it over to you now and then just kind of jump in. The format of this, super relaxed. It's going to be very much a back and forth between me and Cedric. By all means, feel free to make comments in the chat. I have it over on the side of my screen. I'll be keeping an eye on that to kind of interject anything particularly interesting that comes up during this. But I'm sorry, I said take it over and then I cut you off. So now introduce yourself, Cedric.
No, that's fine. So, yeah, definitely copied this, completely. So I'm Cedric, the coffee intern. I don't know why. Anyways, so I'm happy to be here. And kind of when Jay told me the idea for this, it was kind of like what 5 things you wish you knew 6 weeks ago. And I kind of morphed that into just major points that as an intern I've really learned or that have happened and I've had to adapt to it. And then also like some pain points with OpenShift that coming into it, I really did not know that much about. And so I've had to research. I've spent countless hours banging my head against that wall right back there. So it's been a great time. I don't have a book, so I just put one of my favorite books.
I just hit it now.
Cedric, you should say it.
You
should say it like this. I don't have a book yet.
I don't have a book yet. Y'all be on the lookout.
There you go.
O'Reilly's not going to give me a deal.
He is working on a blog entry though. So in addition to his presentations, I'm getting him writing in front of people. So there'll be more coming from Cedric.
Beautiful.
Absolutely. And me and O'Reilly were in touch. And so I just want to pull up the agenda that we're going to be mainly discussing. Of course, we'll go on crazy tangents and everything. But the first is interning during a global pandemic. Everything's changed. I know for one, our team has been already virtual for the past, how long?
I mean, like virtual in the sense that none of us are co-located for years. So in a sense, it's a great atmosphere for an intern to be coming into, because it's not like we're used to having these side conversations that, oh, we're going to forget to tell you. We tend to be very chat based as it is. So yeah, it is a largely remote team spanning Italy up to, oh, damn it. I always forget where Joel's from. Ottawa, let's call it Ottawa, somewhere in Canada, and then over to the West Coast. So you get exposed to all of those fun differences in languages and idioms and just sheer time zone balancing.
Yeah, and it's great to have that diversity, I feel like. Secondly, we're going to talk about containers and OpenShift, how I got introduced, where I learned everything or tried to learn everything. And then, of course, part 2 of the agenda, starting with OpenShift, some problems that I encountered. We'll go into a great story. There's characters, there's people, there's things that happen. You're going to love it. And then just some things that still confuse me to this day, 6 weeks in, that I'm still like, what? I don't get it. So essentially, first off, we're going to start with this. I'm a college student, so I go to NC State University. So East Coast, Raleigh, North Carolina, where Red Hat is actually one of our main headquarters. Okay. I wasn't sure if it was the principal one.
Yes.
So mainly founded in Raleigh too. So there's me on the left. One of the projects I created last semester while we still had actual college and not Zoom university. And so essentially how I got introduced to Red Hat. So Red Hat is super active at our campus. They hire so many students. And one day I'm in computer engineering class. I don't want to be there, of course. So I'm just going on my computer, looking up things, and Red Hat pops into my view. And I know some people who already worked there, had a great time. And so I apply. And my background is more like Arduino code, more like hands-on stuff. I done something with NASA before, more Java, more JavaScript. So I didn't really have much experience with Kubernetes or even OpenShift in general until I got an interview. All right. So Jay is on the right, if you can't tell. I'm on the left. Essentially, Jay wasn't going to be my manager at first until it turns out that my original one was too busy. So fortunately, I got the best manager at Red Hat, and I think the interview went well. What is something that really that you look for when you're talking to applicants? And this is for both Chris and Jay. Like, what's something that's important for an intern or for any employee to have?
Enthusiasm. And that was the number one thing. So you were the only person we interviewed. You were the only intern. And after the interview, I was like, yep, let's take him. All right. Yeah, honestly, it's really all it came down to. Quick clarification though. I was always set to be your manager though. That was, I like working with, I teach a university, so I'm used to working with this age range. Makes you feel so young, but I still you're a kid. Yeah. I really enjoy this side of things. So Jan reached out to me. She's like, I talked to Cedric. Let me know what you think. And you were an enthusiastic nerd is what I tell my students, and it's really primarily what I saw in you. You just like, you had fun doing this shit. We started to, if the interview goes on and you feel the energy building as you guys are going back and forth talking about stuff, that's good on both sides. That's like what I look for. That's what you should look for. And that's to distill it down, that's the biggest thing I look for.
I mean, to answer your question succinctly, I think it's the ability to learn, right? Like, and how you demonstrate that in an interview is, try and crack their mind a little bit. I'm sure that, you could have in turn cracked my mind. So, given the skills that you've shown me just over the course of the past few weeks, I have no doubt that your interview was very good. So
it was fun. I distinctly remember having fun in it.
Yeah. Like, I don't remember many interviews having fun. Yeah. Like, I remember the bad ones, the really bad ones. I remember the really good ones, but I don't typically remember any of them being fun.
We could do a whole stream on the bad ones. In fact, actually, that'd be an interesting stream topic, just talking about interviews and resumes.
Bad tech interviews.
Before we move on, Cedric, what roller coaster is that?
Carowinds, North Carolina.
Oh, nice.
Yep. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so every summer, my dad used to take me to Carowinds when I was growing up.
It's an amazing place.
I miss roller coasters so badly.
Mm-hmm.
I know. Plus, y'all have some good ones in Jersey. I apologize. Keep on going.
I'm the one who interrupted with the coaster. Stop apologizing.
And so in May 14th, there I am at the Red Hat offices.
Were you the only one there?
Yeah. No, fortunately, I never got to go in. Maybe one day I'll get to come into the offices, but they had us take a big intern picture. They have a wall of just intern pictures from home. This is the one I have. Of course, I put the hat on there, badly photoshopped with GIMP.
Nice.
Nice.
But that's how the whole process went. And of course, this is essentially the entire application phase, interviewing phase was before we had any effects of coronavirus. And I'd say like the effects of it now are a little bit different. So I want to talk about the good. I want to talk about the bad. And of course, there's nothing bad, only good things. Don't want to get fired. So the good is that, our team was already virtual. So we had that flexibility. I was going to be going into the offices in Raleigh. However, I'd still be talking to Jay every day, whether it be on Slack or Blue Jeans. And that ties in with
flexibility. I'm from New Jersey. So I had every intention of flying down for his first week to meet in person and knowledge dump there. But this was always going to be a primarily virtual interview. My manager, Jan, on the same team, she's down in Raleigh. So you would have one contact. But like you're saying, we would have largely been fairly virtual to begin with.
Yeah, which is, I think it's a great thing. I think it's wonderful because that allows for a lot of flexibility, which is huge. And it really helps right now. We're all working from home. Interning during a global pandemic also made it easier to work, in my personal opinion, because I can easily get some work done, go for a run, cook me some shrimp downstairs, come right back up, keep working. Not saying that I love it, but it's a great convenience to have.
Why would you say you don't love it?
We haven't gotten to
there
the
was
bed
supposed
yet.
to be like a gym, I think.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was saying we hadn't gotten to the bad yet. You'll cover it, but yeah, you're right. Not having an actual gym at the tower was kind of wonky.
Yeah. But it wasn't bad. And something this is like super unique that I've picked up. So having meetings, and this isn't just the internship, this is just in general, having meetings in person. I feel like if you were super outspoken, you might take all of the voice of the meeting and control that. And I feel like now everything being virtual, everyone has a same piece of the pie when it comes to talking. How do you guys feel about that?
I would agree to a certain extent. I think that having a side chat room, so for Blue Jeans, our typical streaming platform, Zoom, very similar, it lends for a very different dynamic during meetings. And I noticed this too, because like I said, I teach university course, so software engineering in the spring. after spring break. So March onward, we were 100% virtual, which I, again, adapted to for similar reasons that I'm set up. I have the webcam, I have the good mic, I'm used to this. But what I noticed in that was students who were typically more quiet and wouldn't want to interrupt me in the middle of a lecture by raising their hand and stopping everything felt a lot more comfortable dropping one-off comments in chat or dropping questions in chat, knowing I'll get to them when I can and they're not interrupting the flow. I think you're onto something here that chat does present that kind of window. Like if I have a comment that I feel is relevant, but not everybody shut up, I'm going to make my point relevant, I'll drop it in the chat and you get some side conversations. And like, you get that in real life meetings, like you're not experiencing this working virtually, but even in an office, you'll have, if you have any more than I'd say 8 people in a meeting, you're going to have at least 2 conversations at once. And it gets spectacularly frustrating. Even if it's the 2 guys in the corner, like not paying attention and they're working on their code and they're sitting there collaborating on it during the meeting, it's infuriating. So it's not that level of side conversations. You can kind of do both at the same time. There is a little more, people tend to pause a little more on video chat because you know that it's harder for someone to jump in. Whereas in person, people get riled up and you get those kind of alpha personalities who just like bowl over the conversation.
Yeah.
So
it's management, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's balance, right? Like, I've been told my facial expressions give away my thoughts often. So not being in the room during meetings is kind of helpful to me.
That's an interesting comment. It's funny because I even just earlier joked with you in this very stream within the last 10 minutes, you made some kind of reaction to something I said.
Right.
I acknowledged it.
Uh-huh.
And there's some benefit in that. It's interesting because from a presentation standpoint, and I'm getting off topic here, but doing presentation streaming is a little bit different, but you know, I have to do conference presentations coming up, and ones that have typically been really great on stage, I've got to adapt to virtual. And the problem is, I don't have that audience feedback. I noticed it teaching too, where I usually pick out a handful in the crowd who were particularly easy to make laugh and were just kind of giddy the whole time. And I'd interact with them and get a little punchy with them. I'd make comments specifically to them. And that sucks not having that. And, that I'm going to miss from, you know, when I have to do these talks in September. We're off topic, but sorry, continue, Cedric.
No, that's a great thing to know, especially since we're not having conferences for, you know, who knows? Exactly. The last bonus I would say is wearing PJs while you're at work. You know, I feel like this is an innovation that has never happened until 2020. And so I'm glad that could come about during this internship. As far as the bad.
One quick anecdote on that.
My bad.
I was out in our Brno office in the Czech Republic, and there was this woman named Ina.
Nice, Chris.
And she was walking around the office. That was her home office. And I'd worked with her in a previous project, and I see her walk by. I'm in a meeting, and I see her walk by. And you don't think anything of it. She's just got coffee. And then when she comes into view past the door, I see her feet. And she's got these giant, like puppy slippers on that she's walking around the office in. I'm like, that's awesome.
Nice.
And this was literally 5-6 years ago. And I still remember this scene. And you're right about you can't go full blown PJs, but actually for your own kind of edification, like this t-shirt is, you know, the extent of how dressed up. It's a good t-shirt. Chris looked down too, because he's like, is this a work t-shirt or a screw around t-shirt? Because that's our distinction. Like which is nice for Red Hat in this industry.
So I will say, not that anyone asked, but I will say that like, I held up this robe a minute ago because it was a speaker gift for an event this year. JFrog sent me this for speaking at their event. And it was like the best like speaker gift ever because I've never considered wearing a robe until 2020. So like it actually
you can
works.
Wear it to work, and it's work swag.
You know, I work downstairs in my basement office. It's cold down here sometimes. So yeah,
that's pretty cool.
I'm not good. They knew.
Yeah, swamp up. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, continue.
All right, to keep it rolling. So the bad, I would say, of course, the obvious thing is no social aspect. And of course, they've tried to make it engaging as an internship, but it's super difficult, especially when everyone's working different time zones, different places. You can't meet up with anybody. And so that's made it more difficult to network with people. That's something I was really excited to do, but it's, LinkedIn's probably all I got right now, as far as being able to network. And then
that
the
does
last
make
thing
for a
is
level playing field, though, doesn't it?
that it's never been fair. Yeah.
Well,
That is
to
true.
those that are connected, yes, it has never been fairer.
Yes. Yeah, that is true. And then the last one, always at home. So that, that's what we talked about earlier, pluses and minuses for sure. And so some of the things I've learned, of course I knew some stuff before. I never expected how many filters I'd have to make in my Gmail. Jesus. Oh, I remember the first day I had 62 emails or something. I didn't even log in yet.
That's it.
Bad.
Yeah, I remember that. That was so fun because I remember we pulled up Blue Jeans and I was showing you, I was like, let me just tell you right now, you're like, because as an intern, you're like, oh my God, like if I'm not working, if I'm doing this kind of maintenance-y stuff, I'm not actually working. I'm like, no, you're going to need a solid hour to filter your shit out and be able to find email. I was like, here's how I personally do it. I have labels, and then I pulled up my configuration and just scrolled through filter after filter. And you can see like a small part of him died inside as you saw that.
I still don't have it figured out. I've been here for 2 years, so Cedric, let me know.
I'm happy to share. I just,
Yeah,
I'm in college. I'm in college. I never thought that was
right. Like your experience is like, social networking, it's not like schoolwork. It's not like a everyday 24/7 business kind of thing. Right. So yeah, I can definitely see how that would be like a jarring kind of event. What is this number on my phone right now?
At least Chris, he doesn't have Chris Morgan as a manager who will send the 3 a.m. emails about once a week.
He's gotten better about that.
Oh, okay.
He has gotten a lot better about that. They're now
very
at 7
good. The man's sleeping again.
3 a.m. That's crazy. Wow.
More than once.
More than once. I would. There's an auto scheduling feature on Gmail. I want to mess around with people and start sending emails like that. But so the most important thing I've learned is that, without communication, there's really nothing that we have here. And, I've made mistakes in the internship where there was some meeting that me and Jay were scheduled to go to and it slipped my mind and I didn't say anything, or I said something that I was muting notifications, but I didn't have it in my mind. And so missed a meeting. And so there's lessons that you learn that I've definitely learned about being a better intern and like something that I can apply to my college life and professional life as well. So it's huge. Reaching out to other interns and employees is something that I've done. And of course it's harder, right? Because you can't just knock on someone's door and ask to meet with them. But that's still been something I've done.
It is hard. It's one thing in person to like where they can see you feel bad about interrupting them. You can see if you're doing something. Reaching out to someone, even at this point in my career that I don't know, I'm usually start with an apology. And like, okay, look, I don't know me and you're getting an email from me. Like, please don't delete this right away. I'm so sorry, but this is the situation that led me to emailing you. And if I can't explain that, then I'm like, I'm not at the point where I should be emailing them. Like if I can't justify like, okay, I tried looking at this, like the case, I don't know if this is what you're thinking of, and you probably will get to this, but you were working with Open Data Hub and you reached out to someone on that team and that's scary. Like that's scary for me to do, much less an intern, but like it went over really well because I'm sure you approach it and you're just like, all right, look, I've tried this. I have no idea how to continue. I see you have a commit related to this. Can you give me a quick hand on it? But like, it's so much harder in email where you don't have any of that kind of personality or like friendly contact. Like, don't kill me. I seriously got to ask you something though.
Yeah. A friend of mine sent not like an angry email to Paul Vixie one time, but found a bug in Cron and was like, So I think this is a bug, but could you verify this? And if you're not familiar, like cron is a very, very old thing. It's worked very, very well for a long time. It hasn't, really had a lot of feature ads recently. So to get any kind of positive response back from an open source maintainer on your first contact is always good. The old school maintainers don't do that. So I can tell you that a lot of times, not to call Paul out specifically, but yeah, it didn't go well, right? Like, so, and there's tons of documentation on somebody else in the Linux community that's like that as well. But yeah,
I wonder who
we've done a much better job, I think, of educating people about newcomers and first time people, because that's where our community starts.
Yeah, I can't agree with that more. And I think honestly, it might have been the ignorance of me just being like, oh, here's a person who helped with the project, time to email them. That might have been part of it. So if I had gotten a bad response back that first time, I think that would have been the end. Like
I was just about to say that, like, I'm super happy. These, like, God, again, to talk about you like you're like a child, but like this kind of formative years of your career, like my first, okay, so I'll keep this super quick. My first job had, my boss, her name was Charlotte. She worked with another boss at her same level, whose name I won't mention. He was an asshole. And this is what I saw as kind of a model in the industry for a year and a half. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is just how people talk. And it took me a long time to kind of undo that. No, this is not right to talk to people this way, just because he's a manager and that's how he kind of chose to do things. So I'm glad you had a good experience, because that's really rough to have your first experience be completely miserable. And you're like, well, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah, that would have been the end.
Yeah, and it really sullies you to kind of open source in general, because there's definitely been some projects I've interacted with where I'm like, all right, look, you claim to be open and then you're just this obnoxious. Like that's not
right.
It's not practicing what you're preaching. Type of
exactly. No, I have called out developers for very much doing that lately. Yeah.
That's crazy, especially in 2020.
Yeah.
We're trying to move the needle though. Trust me.
Yeah.
Compared to what it was in 1995 when I started. Ooh.
Yes.
And so I'd say the last.
Not that makes it right. It's just better.
Yeah. Better for people like me, students coming into it right now.
Right.
And so I'd say the last thing is applying yourself. So, although we don't have that in-person communication and events and stuff, we still have some stuff online. And I was super active in one of these like online community boards that we have. Like it's an internal thing. And one of the early talent program managers reached out, and she has me hosting like a diversity and inclusion event tomorrow, where people are going to learn about like how to get a career out of software and stuff. So I think the more that you're active and people see that you're active, the more things that are going to come to you, because that's just like law of attraction. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but
no, you're right. I mean, you are explaining it perfectly. That's exactly what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's funny to me, right? Like getting a job at Red Hat, right? It took me a lot of work, not necessarily like networking or anything else, but I actually contributed a lot to opensource.com, which got my name out there more internally at Red Hat. So yeah, like there's all these different ways to get an edge. And it's pretty cool that you're doing that, Cedric. So like, that's not necessarily giving yourself an edge, but you're getting yourself out there, and doing stuff like this gets yourself out there, right? Like people are going to Google you 5 years from now and be like, oh, he's been in software a long time, right? 5 years.
Yeah. You're saying it right. It's like credibility, anything, whether it's committing or publishing content, anything that can build you up. So,
yeah.
Which honestly goes to the last thing about, interning during this pandemic and everything is how it's going to be in the future, because it's already weird right now. I just checked the Red Hat job site. All interviews, all job openings are going to be done online. There's no in-person interviews. Like I think it's over, or at least for a long time. just blows my mind. Because my dad is always talking about, when he was back in his day, this is how they did it. You'd walk into the office of a company, you'd have your resume in hand, right? You'd give the manager your resume, and then you'd say, I want this job. And then they give you the job. Like, you can't do that anymore. And this is
there's so much
the
funny
last-
about that, the walk in, the resume part.
How many times did you practice that, just out of curiosity?
No.
0? That's awesome if you did.
Yeah.
Chris, I would love to do a follow-up stream just about interviewing and resumes and stuff like that. We should definitely get that on the agenda, because that would be super fascinating to talk about.
It would be a fascinating topic. I mean, yeah, there's a lot that we could do to help folks with that. I think you're right, Jay, on that regard. And to be honest with you, that might even be your next book.
That'd be great. Taking it. I've been wanting to do talks about that kind of stuff. I just haven't had time to put them together yet, but kind of bridge what I see out of the Villanova college kids to what it's like actually in the industry.
Yeah.
There's huge differences. Huge differences.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And I'll probably get more into that as we continue to go. But it's going to be harder, in my opinion, to get an internship, because there's going to be so much more competition. But, being passionate, building credibility, Chris, as you said, and then just throwing yourself out there, there's nothing else you can do better than that. Because you can't walk into the office anymore.
I had what I called 2017 was my year of yes or whatever. If anybody asked me to do anything, I would just say yes. And like that built up so much credibility that, like, if I submitted a CFP, like, people kind of knew who I was at that point, right? And it was just like, you get to a point where it's like you're either known, or people are familiar with your work, or something, like you stick in the back of people's minds at some point if you do it long enough. And you might build up a negative reputation if you're not careful. So you gotta, everything has balance that requires, like you gotta be firm when it's right to be firm, and be helpful when it's right to be helpful, and try not to confuse the two.
Absolutely. The more you say yes, the more opportunities will come. Like,
yeah, but it led to burnout. But yeah,
yeah, I was gonna say
that's
that
what I
too.
was about to ask.
Yeah.
Is if
The saying yes
when
to
did that
things
happen?
ends up real out of control very fast.
So burnout's a funny thing, right? Like, burnout takes time, right? I would say I was like burnt out probably by the end of 2017, right? Like,
The full year. Right?
Yeah, like I did the full year, and I think CubeCon of that year was like, all right, I feel like I've done this enough. And it was just like, let me be more selective now. And it's just been more selective ever since, right? Like, I've only got so much, like, I just turned 40, and, no, not to have a dichotomy here, but your youth, my age, like, I have only so much time left on Earth, right? And I want to make the best use of that time. And sometimes the best use of that time is going to be doing nothing. And I have to understand that, right? And like recovering and taking care of myself. If you just notice, I just took some medication, right? Like that's stuff I have to do, because if I don't, balance is lost, and chaos ensues. Yeah, self-care is huge.
Yeah. I'd still say to like any college students who are on the stream right now, or younger people, like, here's the prime years, like you gotta nail everything down, say the yeses, like all of that. That's what I'm trying to do right now, at least. And so as we continue, let's talk about containers, OpenShift. When I started out, I knew Jack, like, it was bad. It was so bad because it wasn't a part of our curriculum.
I'm not surprised. I mean,
I'm not surprised, but
they can't chase the technologies, because your diploma has to be timeless.
Yeah.
So I look back on you're now working with REST APIs and stuff like that, and I spent years working on web services and SOAP and all of the WX protocols, and they're dead now. And that's not wasted time or knowledge or anything like that. But if we taught that in school, and I came out of college being like, oh, I've taken 2 semesters worth of classes in web services. We don't use that tech anymore. So adapting a college level curriculum to use containers too much is slow to move and then a gamble, because who knows what 3 years from now the new hotness is going to be. I mean,
right, they would have had to have started right when Docker
they had to
was
start
hot,
super early.
Yeah.
But in any event, keep going,
so
because I'm intrigued at how you're kind of talking about your entry level experience here.
Absolutely. So I had experience, with web apps and stuff. I'm a big fan of Node. But I never really worked with any kind of containers at all. I had never really played around with that stuff. I didn't know any of my like peers or colleagues who had done that either. So it was kind of such a big thing for me to get into it. And really, when I was learning, it was Jay was just sending me a lot of things to do, like just tons of online content, and most of it's with learn.openshift.com, which was super informative with all these Katacoda scenarios. And then probably the other half, or the other 30%, was YouTube, like just dudes in webcast just explaining everything about Docker and about Kubernetes and Minikube and everything like that. So I think it's a good mix, just because anyone can post on YouTube, and then our learning portal is more refined and everything. In the Twitch stream, I would watch the master courses that we had, and those were super informative. So that's really where I went to learn, because I had such little experience that pretty much any kind of information was a bonus, was helpful,
Would you say the video was better than written word, in your opinion?
I say in some cases.
Okay.
Some cases, if it was like a live demo, that was the most helpful thing ever.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, good question. That's very interesting perspective.
Yeah, so like there's this, I don't know if it's a misconception or whatever, that the current generation prefers video over written text or whatever. I don't think that's necessarily true, but there's more video now capabilities wise than ever. So I think that's probably the it's one of those, it's corollary, not causation kind of thing or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. No, I like the idea of having more like actual fundamental demos and
Well, I agree with that. I just feel like the software industry is going to be the last industries to adopt video as like a means of teaching. Like, we weren't on Twitch before. We weren't really active on Twitch as much before coronavirus happened, but now we are, and that's because it's just the adaptation. So I feel like we're slower to get to video, and that's something I'm really passionate about, like with the Podman video and other videos I want to make, because I feel like there's so much value there. But it's like a slow moving worm, it's gonna take its time.
Yeah. It's generational.
Right. It is generational. Yeah. And congrats on 1,000 followers on the Twitch stream.
Thank you. I'm sure you were a big part of that.
It's funny because it's slower to adopt video, but it's also like, I really miss my live conferences.
Right.
I miss duty.
It's
I miss seeing people.
The live streaming. If it weren't for the live streaming, I don't think I would like be as happy as I am right now with work. Right. Because like I don't get to interact with people like other than the people here at home, right? And I love my wife, I love my kid, I love my dog, but there's a whole lot more people out there in the world that I would rather spend time with than just 3 people all day, right?
Yeah. And I mean, there's work and everything, but it's such a good medium of communicating information. So I was really, when I was learning the most stuff, it was either by failing with a cluster, or it was by watching people who knew their shit do it already and teach it to me on like some kind of YouTube video. So that's essentially everything that I learned. And then of course, a lot of head banging, I'd sit out on my porch and I'd really like look up at the stars and really, wonder why I couldn't, start Rook or something. But we'll get to that soon. And just like the first things that I really noticed about the differences in between like Minikube and OpenShift is, while Kubernetes is like super open. You can install on whatever you want. OpenShift really had that security and the Jenkins integration, which was awesome. And a lot of like third-party stuff that was really cool to just play around with. Especially with the UI. Like the UI on Minikube was just not, Kubernetes UI just did not fascinate me at all. I wasn't a fan. I don't know how y'all feel about it, but
I mean, I think it's super
I much
intentional.
preferred OpenShift.
It's very intentional.
Really?
It's very intentional. Kubernetes is meant to be an engine, and OpenShift is the Porsche you put the engine in, or pick your car of choice. I'm not a car guy. I really don't give a shit. But point being, it's the engine, and OpenShift has all of the stuff on top of it. So I'm not surprised that you're finding our UI better experience.
And listening to Kubernetes maintainers over the years, I think it was Joe Beta that said they never thought people would be managing YAML files ever when Kubernetes was first like spawned. Yeah. And now look at us. Like I call myself a calendar-driven YAML engineer. Yeah.
I mean, that's the running joke. You see every KubeCon, you see someone wearing a t-shirt or some kind of joke about being a YAML engineer.
Yeah.
And they're not really wrong either.
No.
I had no idea that was ever, that's crazy. That blows my mind.
Yeah, there you go. Well done.
But honestly, just the web UI on OpenShift, and especially being able to edit the YAML files in a browser and then see like the console of the deployment and seeing all the pods and stuff in an actual terminal on the web UI was just fantastic. Like I love that. Like it's all easy to navigate, and administration and then development is in two different tabs, and so I really liked it.
So that's cool. I'm gonna interrupt for a second because what I'm about to say, this is not a good way to prefix this comment, but I don't mean this to be obnoxious in the slightest. Chris earlier, so Chris just mentioned he's 40. I just turned 41, so we're in the same boat. And like you talked about being in this since like 95. It's like the same type of thing. Like our whole lives, we've seen things from CRTs and like completely shit environments to where they stand now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was interested if that's where you were going with the video question, because I kind of had a similar question too about a generational thing. This is another generational thing that kind of fascinates me, is the fact that you like the YAML editor and terminal inside of the browser. And I don't know what it means that you like that, as dumb as that sounds, but because to me, like I came in with I use my editor, my IDE, which I don't go as far back as to be a VI guy because that's just too obtuse. And I know Brian Tanis is in chat, so I'm just waiting for the stream to catch up to him to flame the shit out of
What's wrong with Vim? What's wrong with Vim?
Yeah, exactly. I know that hate's coming in a couple seconds when it catches up.
Oh, now people are like lens.
But I was going somewhere with this and a terminal, and then that's how I like to do my dev. And I'm curious about kind of this generation who grew up more with a browser and much more well thought out and flexible and powerful UIs. But it's funny because what you're describing is effectively the stuff that I would do just native to my system. So like there's something there, like where you're like, I want to work with the browser, but then you still like being able to get down into like the guts of everything. And now we have this lens side conversation going on. So
no, that's so huge, because like when I mean I like it, like say we're talking about like Azure or something, like you can get to the terminal or AWS, like you can get to the terminal, but you have to go like around hoops and stuff, and you have to have like Java enabled, and it's such a mess.
Okay, I get what you're getting at there. And real quick to chat, kubectl is how I would pronounce that.
Yeah, kubectl.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, Cedric.
But like, no, it's fine. The less, I think just having access to it to do any small things is so huge, and the more stuff that we can have in the UI in the browser, the better. Like you have like Chrome OS nowadays is completely in the browser. Like everything is done in the browser. Your settings for your entire operating system are in the browser.
I'm curious. In growing up over the years and being in computer science, or how much Chrome OS did you use over the years coming up?
Probably like 2 years of it.
Okay.
2 or 3 years. Cool. Yeah.
No, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's actually standardized. Like every student in North Carolina, I think, has to be able to have access to a Chromebook.
Oh,
Like
okay.
that's
Wow.
how big it is. So
All
that's
right.
like millions or
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of Chromebooks that we've purchased, just our state. Um, so it's just like growing up, like that's what the whole youth is just used to. It's like everything in a browser. So when I saw that I could access the terminal, access any kind of logging stuff, like Prometheus in the browser, I was like, nice.
Interesting.
Um,
Also, this is a
Hmm.
great tangent, not that we're going in this direction, but they're adding a full-blown CLI access into the browser specifically to kind of accommodate this. So your OC commands, like I'm not describing it
oh
correctly, but this is something that we're
yeah,
going forward with, and it's going to enable us to do a whole bunch of
Terminal
other
inside
cool
the
stuff.
OpenShift console.
That's
Yes.
a much more succinct way of putting it.
Yes.
oh,
But
that's
it's,
awesome. Wow.
I like that was the direction you were like, this is cool to see this because we're already going down that route. So it's like cool validation. Like, okay, cool. We didn't just waste all that time in the
That
terminal.
it's that it's hitting something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
um, here's fun story time that we can get to. Getting started with OpenShift, my first experience with it, actually doing like a project with it, not just doing like little fun demos, was this piece of crap called the. Oh, no, I'm kidding. It's called the Open Data Hub, so it's like the AI platform powered by open source. It's a project that Red Hat works on. It frustrated me for I think 2 or 3 weeks where I was just breaking down. I couldn't figure out what was going wrong. I even contacted people who were working on the team, and so me and Open Data Hub have beef. Open Data Hub's great though, super useful, super great project. But yeah, it's tough. So
So
what Jay had
some
me
side
doing.
back.
Oh, my
Okay.
bad, my bad.
No, it's fine. You may introduce this later, but I'm going to talk about it now. So, what had
Yeah.
happened was there's this fraud detection demo, which is definitely a beast of a demo, as you can see here,
Hmm.
that the Open Data Hub and AI team have done at Red Hat Summit for the past 2 years. I want to say 18 and 19. I don't think they did it again in 20. And it's all of these pieces you can imagine are quite a headache to set up. Now, they have instructions in a Git repo somewhere, and I was like, all right, see what happens when you run through them, and then we're going to work on automating it. And that's where Cedric's going to go in the next couple slides. I told him, and I'm curious. Okay. I don't want to say this yet. I told him, I was like, just because there's instructions in the Git repo does not mean they're going to work. And I was like, thank you, Chris. That's exactly the reaction why I didn't want to lead toward it. I said, like, there's like an 80% chance that the instructions you see in the Git repo are actually going to still be valid. Judging on Chris's face, I think you have the same reaction Eric Jacobs did when I said it to him. And he's like, you were super generous saying 80%. So this wasn't a hazing or a trial by fire, because I legitimately was like, if it does work, this is a very cool learning experience. But at the same time, you're going to have a billion of these stories in your career of this should have been straightforward and it wasn't. And you're going to run into, oh, these docs suck, or oh, these docs are straight up wrong, or oh, these docs don't actually exist. And again, it wasn't something obnoxious like I'm gonna throw you in some shit so you can have a bad experience. It wasn't like that.
No, yeah.
But at the same time, the fact that you came away with it, like, let's say you don't come back to Red Hat next year, but at some point in your life, you're going on further interviews. And going back to that earlier question, like, don't tell an interviewer like everything was amazing. Like, be able to critically talk about what happened in this, and oh, this was some of the issues you ran into, and it's over engineered or poorly documented or something. And like, I don't want to hear sunshine and rainbows when interviewing someone. I want you to tell me, like, this is what happened. This is me critically breaking down, like, maybe there was no better approach, but this is still painful. Problem is, I don't have a better answer to it. But just that kind of critical thinking and showing me you're not just going through the motions, and showing me you're not just blindly being like, oh, Java's great, there's no problems with the language. Slow down. Like, tell me, like, give me some analysis here, because nothing is amazing out the gate. Okay, I'm sorry. So go on to the agnostic D stuff.
No, absolutely. I completely slipped that because I've worked on it so much that it's like in brain, like it's just stuck in my brain. So I apologize. Like, it completely slipped.
No. I mean,
it's
like, it's fine. And like I said, this is going to be something where that is a big takeaway from the internship. Like, okay, this is what it's like dealing with a large project that I didn't write myself, and I'm trying to figure out and learn, amongst everything else going on.
yeah, and that's literally what it was, like a big learning experience. So I was tasked with writing an Ansible playbook, and then port that over to a system that Red Hat has. And correct me if I'm wrong. It's called Agnostic D, and it essentially just allows you to deploy this on a cluster using what we have this thing called Red Hat Product Demo System, right?
Yep.
PDS.
Yeah. So you're going in the right direction. So the agnostic D doesn't necessarily require PDS. It is just a mechanism for running Ansible roles to configure a cluster.
Yes.
Once you get the base cluster in place, you can use agnostic D to then execute these playbooks and say, I want to pick and choose. I want this, and this on my cluster. They're reusable roles, go. So it's largely Ansible with some structure around it. This PDS system that he's talking about uses this and has some mechanisms for actually standing up the initial clusters and kind of applying them and then managing them and then reaping the clusters after 48 hours because they're paying the bills, and me as the user is just like, stand up clusters. I don't give a shit because it's not my paycheck.
Bow, bow, bow.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden one day they're like, wow, this is really expensive. We need to start killing these clusters on our own because we don't trust assholes like Jay to actually kill them themselves.
Right. So RHPDS is one of the godsends of working at Red Hat, I feel like. Because it's one of the few places where I've had a place that I can honestly say, nope, this doesn't work. Try again.
It's a monolith, but it has great features.
Yes,
wonderful features.
Yeah.
But I have a email filter of every email I've ever gotten from PDS.
Oh yeah. You've got to have you can test out all the fun stuff, but the more clusters you generate, the more email you get. Yeah.
I warned him about that. I love him, and I say this with nothing but love in my heart, but like you ask to provision a cluster, and then they send you an email saying, hey, we got your request to provision a cluster. And then like 10 seconds later, they're like, hey, by the way, we still remember your cluster. We just haven't started provisioning it yet. And then a couple minutes later, they're like, cool, we started on it. We'll let you know when it's done. And it used to be a little bit worse. It used to be like every 10 minutes until the setup took closer to 75 minutes. And then it's this big jump where it's like, ta-da, you have a cluster. But the initial kind of blast is particularly funny because there's all these like very like small little steps just being like, I got you. It's cool. I'm going to make it. I promise. Look, I'm starting. Here it is. I'm building something. Just tell me the credentials when I'm ready, when you're ready.
It's a lot of affirmation. So, it's not bad. It's not bad.
Yes, but, Brian, you're naturally, I love that.
As I go in to check and make sure I have my RHPDS cluster for later. Yeah.
Yeah. Make sure, because they can disappear. They can disappear.
They
can just go away.
You can push the button and they could not provision for some reason. There's warnings you can set up, but you have to set them up, right? Like
they'll go to sleep randomly.
They power. Anyway,
don't get me started on that one.
Yeah, it's happened to me in the middle of a demo before, so yeah, it's a thing.
Yes, it is. There's a fair amount of Red Hatters who have that kind of battle experience where you're up on stage, you're like, well, this sucks.
Hang on
Let's talk about something else.
Let me log in and hit restart, please.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, fun stuff, man.
That's why they pay all the big bucks. So it's supposed to write a playbook, which is fairly simple to do. You can either use the Kubernetes like native language that they have in there to just do Kubernetes task, or you can give straight like terminal commands, which is what you can see it actually on the screenshot that I pulled up. Just the name of the command that you're doing and the command that you can actually insert, do environment variables, anything you want. It's really, really pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And so, I spent 2 to 3 weeks on it, just going back and forth, trying every different version of OpenShift, trying so many different things. And every time I would restart a new cluster, I had a different issue come up. And so it was tough. We even went on a stream and spent 3 hours, 3 hours trying to solve it.
I love that the screen capture there because you have this look of just like, I got nothing, like no more of this. I don't know what I'm looking at. I got to tell this kid something. And then JJ's just watching me squirm on this. This is amazing and across the board.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how far we really got into it on the stream, but definitely a learning experience for sure. And so, you know, as I've gone through that, and you know, I still poke around, but I haven't been able to push farther. And so I learned three main things. So there's not always a set way to go about things. When I was writing the playbook, no one else had written something for this Open Data Hub workload. So I was essentially going off, you know, whatever I had. And so sometimes you have to start fresh. And that was something I never really experienced because in Java, in JavaScript, there's always someone who's done it before you, you know? Like there's always a problem. Say what?
Stack Overflow.
Yeah.
Stack Overflow, exactly. The screenshot, the logo I had earlier, there's always someone who's came about the problem. And I've learned that generally people are willing to help you, especially if you're a student, you know, using the education email, the .edu email. People love that because people were students, you know, back in their day, whatever it was, you know, they understand the struggle, the hustle. And then the last part really is failing is part of the process. Like if you don't fail, do you learn, you know? Right. So yeah,
cool.
Pretty much. And then just, you know, if I had to restart and learn OpenShift all over again, I would definitely go with the Katacoda scenarios, you know, have some success, have some failures, keep using PDS if you have access to it, you know. It's harder to get access to it. And just honestly, what I ended up doing when I was doing the Open Data Hub fraud detection demo is I just installed my own, I think it was like 4.4 OpenShift on Rail and went from there. Like that's essentially what I did, so I could have full access and everything. So that's pretty much getting started. The stuff that I did recently, the failures that I had, it was a good time.
Good time had by all. Yeah. No, that's good stuff, man.
Mm-hmm. And so just some stuff that continues to either get on my nerves or, you know, confuse me, all of that stuff. So, you know, initially coming in as an intern, there's so many different versions of OpenShift. I didn't know what, and sometimes the docs aren't updated from like 3.11, and it's hard to go about it. Some of the language is tough. I ended up learning a lot more from blogs sometimes than I did from actual documentation, and I didn't do that before. You know, normally the docs did everything.
There's something that's both of those things you just mentioned. So the docs showing up as 3.11, Google, if you Google a concept and just say like OpenShift docs, a lot of people when they're first getting started get bit because they don't look at the URL, and the URL will have in there the version number at some point. Yeah. So it'll come back and it'll give me as far back as like a 3.7 URL, and I'll just manually change it to say 4.4. And most of the time it works. Sometimes it's been restructured or the concept doesn't exist, but it's a definite issue with the way Google kind of catalogs things and returns them. And then I'd say even outside of this, generally speaking, I prefer a blog or tutorial type thing over formal product documentation. The exception of API documentation is probably the one distinction, only if they include example like requests and responses type of thing. But personality wise, I don't typically react to formal tech writer speak as much as I do a blog that is like, okay, here, this is the shit you need to know. Like boom, boom, boom. This is where you're going to get bitten.
Yeah.
Don't be stupid. Here's my example. Like that's just always been me. I mean, you can tell it in my presentation style too. And the fact that I've cursed 1,000 times on the stream, like I want that human aspect. I just learn better from someone being like, look, this is what you need to know. don't do this, cool, and then go from there.
Yeah, that's how it's been. Just any way more like human sounding talk, anything like that is just wonderful. And so, I've learned that there's an acronym for virtually everything. I joined as an intern like the 14th, and I immediately saw all these acronyms in the Slack channel. I was like, what's happening? I had no idea. I still get confused. I still get confused by stuff I see.
So I'm going to toot my own horn for a second, because I have what started as the getting started checklist for Cedric, but one of the things I'm most proud of including in there was the terminology section, because and I knew it wasn't going to capture everything. And then the first couple of weeks, and in fact, I should probably get back to doing this, but we'd be in meetings together, and in private messages over Slack, I would be translating what people abbreviate into what they actually stood for. And it's particularly funny when I don't remember the full like letters for things like CNCF, Cloud Native Computing Foundation, but like there's things like that. Yeah. That wasn't a great example. There's ones I stumble through where I'm just like Cloud Native CF. I'm like, I don't friggin' know. This is what we should care. OKRs. That's the one that got me.
Yeah. So
we were talking about OKRs, and I'm like, conceptually, I can tell you what it is. I'm like, I can't remember the whole life.
Internally at Red Hat, we have Acrobat, which you might be able to find on IRC and in certain channels that we use for various communications. I would highly recommend, if you're using GChat, check that out. Acrobat, keep track of your acronyms there.
Interesting.
Good place to use that. And then acronymfinder.com or .net always has like every acronym I've ever looked up ever.
Really?
Right? Like
even
ever.
Like the weird Red
even
Hat
the weird
specific ones?
Yes, even the weird ones. Someone has put
Wow.
it in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Kind
it's
of
like they scrape the internet for acronyms and just put them in. It's crazy to me.
But yeah, I mean, regardless, the fact that that site exists kind of really hammers home Cedric's point.
Mm-hmm.
There's a question in chat I'm going to call out for you, Cedric. So I'm wondering if most of the development that Cedric did was on OpenShift only, no local development using Odo, CRC, or something alike, which I'm going to fill in the alike to mean something like Minikube. Would you play with any of those tools? CRC, Minikube?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did. Well, it initially it was all remote stuff. And then I wanted more control. And so I was like, well, I got to do this manually. And I never really worked before. So that's why I was like afraid to really do it on my local machine. But, I went ahead and I was like, I need to see what's happening, because in a remote server, you don't really get control of everything. And so I was like, yeah, I got to install it on my own machine. So yeah, it's a good question though.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's interesting because I'm going to make a super raw generalization, but like the better engineers I've found typically want to have at least seen the process locally and are not content with black magic. And there's a certain point where you can be like, I click a button in PDS, I have my cluster, I use it. And then the curious, the very strong engineers are like, well, what's really happening here? And we'll take some spare hardware and be like, can I stand this up? And CRC in particular is tricky because there's only so hot a laptop can get before it actually turns into molten gel. So CRC on a laptop is tricky to begin with. But Minikube, like you saw me using that pretty much day one on the master course, where I was literally like, we're gonna use Minikube because I made a typo and I'm gonna destroy and rebuild it and it's done. So cool, let's keep moving. But yeah, being able to play around with that stuff, very interesting question. I'm sorry, back in acronyms, I interrupted you there.
Oh, no, it's fine. And I think, acronyms, the way to find those, like the different websites that you mentioned, and then the cheat sheets. So when I was making the Podman video, which actually, since we're closing in on time, I'll go ahead and hop in there, which you can find on YouTube, of course. There's about to be a vlog created for it. When I was going along with that, and so I had the whole editing process. Chris, you might like to see this.
Yeah.
So
when I was
Chris, I'm setting up in the next 2 weeks a brown bag lunch where I'm gonna have Cedric talk about how he made this video. I'm gonna invite TMM and my team too.
Thank you.
Figured you guys would appreciate that.
Yeah, no, like I've got every tool in the world available to me. It's just I need to know how to use them all.
I'm happy to show, but like when I was making that, because I actually made the video before like the writing or the blog, and so that's weird because you have to have everything already done and then add the, you know, video component and like the talking and everything. But I definitely used the cheat sheets that, you know, Red Hat developer website had. That was wonderful, helped so much, because Podman, I feel like there's not enough resources and information and guides and tutorials. Like the video that I literally made like last week is already number 4 when you look up Podman. You type in Podman on YouTube, it's the 4th video.
Wait until you type in your name and it's the
Go
first.
Intern. It's funny though. You're not wrong. Podman, I do see very little messaging about, which is why I'm kind of happy you're running with this, with the blog. I also love, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I love that the thumbnail is you and Nyan Cat.
Nyan Cat, yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. And it's a relevant part of, like, it's not just there for shock value, but it differentiates it from the billions of other virtual assets getting put out right now that are so stale and dry and just straight to the point, that you see that and you're like, I gotta see what the hell he's getting at here.
Yeah, no, I'm happy I could create it. That's one of the things I really like. And, you know, making the blog right now is also super dope. Because I've never done that before. I used to hate WordPress. WordPress was my worst enemy. Now we're like becoming homies. But just that whole learning curve of just being able to learn information from blogs and cheat sheets and YouTube and the learn.openshift.com. Like, it's, you take everything you have, you filter through the best things that work for you as a visual learner. That's what I used. But just, I don't know, the whole intern process has been a lot of learning, to be honest, as well as creating stuff and working on stuff. So it's been a great time.
Hey, Cedric, this whole live stream process, this whole past 2 years at Red Hat has been nothing but a learning experience for me. So yeah, you never stop learning.
I'm about to say, when I stop, I change teams. Like, once I've figured something out, I'm like, oh, I'm kind of bored here. It's time to like move on.
I hope it's always like that. And, you know, I know, Jay, you have a allergy appointment coming up soon. So, and it's crazy because we actually just got to the end of the slides, and so we can continue talking about anything. If anyone has questions, feel free to drop it in chat. I think this has been a wonderful experience.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad you're able to put this together for us. Like I said, I expect to do another one, something similar to this, maybe the stream at the end of the summer, maybe some kind of write-up with similar types of content. But that, I mean, it was more valuable. I thought this was going to be more content-based. Having that initial intern stuff was super valuable too. And I think that it's so nerve-wracking for a lot of people. And you know, the amount of times you kind of apologize for not knowing something. And I'm like, seriously, like, embrace the fact that you're on a team whose sole job is to teach people this product.
No kidding.
We can't help you through it. We are all screwing up spectacularly. But, you know, being able to put out that video and the other streams you've done for us, like that kind of stuff, jumping in and banging it out this early in the internship is really, really cool. So
yeah. I'm going to drop a link in chat about, it's from Julia Evans. It's No Feigning Surprise. It's one of her great comics about like how our initial reaction is, what? You don't know that? Like, and no, it's actually a great opportunity to be like, oh, I get to teach you this thing today. Right. Like, very, very good to keep in the back of your mind. So no feigning surprise.
Yeah. I tell my students that too. Like, they always ask me for internship advice. I'm like, when you're learning stuff, I was like, contribute back to the documentation, because I guarantee you it's old, because the last person to do it was the last new hire, which was anywhere from last year's intern to well before that. So like, for anyone on here, like, don't just jump in and just JJ. So I mentioned him earlier. He's the guy we stream with over at the IBM. Like, when we're doing that on channel and something comes up that feels wonky, and he's just like, hang on, we got to submit a pull request or an issue or something on GitHub. Like, he doesn't miss a beat for like kicking back to it, which is really cool. Which is really, really awesome.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Cedric. Thank you, Jay, for making Cedric come on.
Yeah, actually, I meant to say that too. Thank you, Cedric, for me not so subtly being like, okay, we're going to stream in 3 weeks. Get ready for this. I knew you had said you wanted to be doing stuff like this, but at the same time, I was just like, yeah, I was like, we're totally doing this. I just saw a comment about memo list. I warned him from minute one to just not look at memo lists. So I see where you're going with this about writing about it and contributing it back to it. I don't know that that's the avenue I really want to throw an intern into. Where
I would rather it be like the Red Hat blog or something like that.
Yeah, there's got to be some other. Like I said, I'm gonna have him write about it for somewhere between the OpenShift blog and or the Red Hat developers blog, and we can kind of push the content out from there. But it's funny you specifically mentioned memo list because day one we joked earlier about like all the filters and stuff like that. I'm like, here's how you set up a filter to go directly to trash. I'm like, if it says to memo list, this is the trash button because you don't want to be like too young to be inundated with all of the shit that comes over that mailing list.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, guys, I've got to jump to a meeting. Appreciate you both joining. Thank you all so much for joining. Join us back here in a few hours. We're actually going to be doing a Summit Lab live streamed here for the first time ever. So yeah,
Matt and Michael, two really, really good presenters.
Yeah, like I'm
really
very
content.
excited. Matt is a genius with OpenShift, and Michael, he taught me containers. He taught me about containers originally at a Go meetup in Raleigh one time. So
Michael did?
Yeah.
So
Michael and Vincent Batts taught me about containers. Yeah.
Mike was this probably the single best like full-time hire I ever made at Red Hat, where I got his resume and I took one look at it and I was just like, so he's fuck, you have to go someplace, don't you, Chris?
Yeah.
All right, I'll keep this super quick then. Amazing dude, super bright guy. Definitely tune in for that.
Right.
Yeah, he's awesome. It's gonna be really cool stuff.
Yeah.
I'll tell that story some other time.
Yeah. We'll have you all back on. Don't worry. Trust me.
Cool.
All right. Thanks you. Thank you, everyone. Catch you soon.
Later, everyone.
Yes. Thanks so much. Ciao.